Hello, and welcome to the Osteoarthritis Action Alliance Lunch and Learn webinar for April 20th, 2022. Our presenter today is Dr. Nicholas Beresic, Director of Communications for the Osteoarthritis Action Alliance. He is a certified health educator specialist and certified personal trainer with over 15 years of experience in the health and wellness industry. Dr. Beresic has worked with clients in a variety of settings, including nonprofit, commercial, corporate, higher education, and medical facilities. His specialties include social marketing, ergonomics, worksite wellness, and mentoring the next generation of health educators. Dr. Beresic's presentation today is titled, How May Climate Change Affect the Physical Activity Guidelines in the Future?
Thank you, Katie. I really appreciate it. Hello, everyone. I'm a little scruffy today. I lost my voice over the weekend, but we will get through this together. If you have any questions, please put into the chat. I'd be more than happy to answer them. And I'd like to take a second to thank the OA Action Alliance for allowing me the opportunity to present on a topic which is a little different from what you're used to hearing during this monthly webinar. For a little bit of backstory, last year I attended the SOFI National Conference, and in between sessions, I attended a breakout session led by SOFI's Environmental Health Community of Practice. And they were trying to recruit more individuals to join their group. And I liked the energy of the co-leader of the group. So I told them, sure, I would love to join the group. So fast forward a few weeks later, and I attended my first online meeting of the group. And during this meeting, we collectively decided we wanted to complete a research study to try to bring more attention to the issue of climate change. I volunteered to take the lead on this initiative, and I'm proud to share I presented the findings at the 2022 SOFI National Conference, which took place about a month ago. Today's presentation is an extended version of the poster presentation I gave during this conference. But I have to make note, this was a group project completed by several members of our community of practice. I also have to admit, I'm still relatively new to the science of climate change, but what I do know is the fitness industry. I've been a certified personal trainer and Group X instructor since the early 2000s. Plus, I've worked in a variety of fitness-related roles over the past 15, 20 years. So knowing this, I thought it'd be interesting to see how climate change may impact outdoor exercise enthusiasts like myself 20 years from now when I'm hoping to start my plans for retirement. So based on this knowledge, the title of this presentation is, How May Climate Change Affect the Physical Activity Guidelines in the Future? For the unfamiliar, research has shown climate change is projected to increase the number of days outdoor temperatures reach 90 degrees or above. This increase has the potential to make outdoor physical activity even more difficult for many, especially those affected by health inequities. You might be thinking, well, why don't you just exercise indoors to beat the heat? Unfortunately, not everyone has the disposable income to join a fitness center or to purchase a Peloton bike and stream classes, or even to purchase an air conditioner. Remember, hot, humid weather is a barrier to exercise for many individuals. But if you add in a lack of green spaces, unsafe neighborhoods, missing sidewalks, and underlying health issues such as obesity to the mix, you can see how this may be a real struggle to reach the physical activity guidelines. So let's take a little closer look at these guidelines. The physical activity guidelines for Americans note that adults attempting to lose and keep off a significant amount of weight may need to be physically active over 300 minutes per week. This breaks down to approximately 43 minutes per day. This is definitely achievable, but how might climate change affect this recommendation? Well, the NATA's position statement on exertional heat illnesses state that in an outdoor wet bulb temperature of 90 degrees, which we know will be occurring more frequently in the future due to climate change, a maximum of 40 minutes of outdoor exercise should be completed. So based on this comparison, it's starting to become apparent that certain locations in our country may be more or less accommodating to outdoor exercise in the future. This leads us to the purpose of the study. We sought to determine whether a city's walk score, which is a measure of walkability in a given area, accurately reflects the potential ability to be physically active outdoors 20 years from now based on a projected worst-case climate change model. To complete this task, first we identified a unique metric for each of the 106 largest cities in the continental United States, which incorporates both walk score and projected increases in temperature of 90 degrees between 2021 and 2041. Once done, we listed the 10 US cities that showed the greatest relative increase and decrease in metric ranking as compared to walk score ranking. Here's our results. First, we'll discuss the cities which produce the highest metric. For the unfamiliar, walk score is a proprietary calculation expressed as a number between 0 and 100 that measures the walkability of a location. So the higher the number, the better. But remember, this is inevitably going to happen due to the climate change. So if you divide a city's walk score by this difference in increase, you come up with our unique metric for this study. In a nutshell, we want to see a high numerator and a low denominator. So the higher the metric, the better. I'm going to pause here so you can just give it a quick little look. There's a lot of numbers on the screen right now. Interpreting this table, the first observation we see is those cities with a higher metric are generally located in upper 2/3 of the West Coast or in the upper northeast corner of the US. But even this can be deceiving if you take last year's heat dome into consideration. We know that cities like San Francisco and Seattle have some of the highest income inequality in the nation. Might adding a large influx of new people to these highly walkable cities further exacerbate income inequalities? Or might more frequent wildfires due to climate change make the air quality too unsafe to exercise outdoors? I don't know, but it really makes you wonder. As for the other coast, the East Coast, when I think of Buffalo and Boston, I picture winter sports. But if there's less snow due to climate change, hopefully some other form of outdoor activity or a new sport, which isn't traditionally played in this geographic area of the country, will fill the void. Next, we'll discuss the cities which produce the lowest metric. And I have to admit, I was a little shocked and dismayed by this finding. Once again, I'm going to pause so you can kind of take a quick little look at this table. As you can see, North Carolina and those major cities located rather close to North Carolina appear to be a poor choice for outdoor exercise enthusiasts 20 years from now. Good thing I bought a house in North Carolina. Yes, we have some great greenways, but an extra 20 to 25 days of 90-degree weather doesn't really encourage their use as a true alternative source of transportation. In terms of physical activity and exercise, I've witnessed time and time again that the masses tend to prefer the fastest, easiest, cheapest option. And unfortunately, using our current greenway system is definitely not any of these three things. First, it's not the fastest option. Driving a car is the fastest option. Second, it's not the easiest option due to missing links between greenways, dangerous street crossings, and the great distances one needs to travel on either bike or foot to get from the suburbs to the urban centers. And third, walking is definitely cheaper than driving. But then again, if there's an extra 20 to 25 days of 90-degree weather, how motivated are you going to be to go on a walk in the hot summer months? Now we're going to discuss the second objective of the study. We did the same calculations here as we did in the other table that we just saw, only this time we compared general rankings. Basically, we changed the data set from an interval scale to an ordinal scale. And this was done to try to produce some additional insights from the data set. So I'll pause again so you can look at it. Interpreting this table, the first observation we see is those cities with a higher metric are generally located in some of the hottest areas of the country, including Arizona, Texas, and Las Vegas. These cities are already less walkable during the summer months due to the urban heat island effect. So I can't see how adding more 90-degree days encourages more outdoor exercise. Exercising at night or in the early morning is a potential way to get around this dilemma. But if the residents are afraid of crime, most aren't going to risk their lives to squeeze in some extra steps. Maybe new coalitions made up of crime prevention advocates, neighborhood walkers and bike riders, and health educators will start to pop up in these cities. I think it sounds pretty cool to me. And finally, we'll discuss the cities which produce the lowest metric, which includes some of the largest urban areas in the country. We'll go ahead and pause again. These large cities have a wide assortment of parks, sidewalks, and bike lanes. But let's remember the purpose of the study was to determine the potential ability to be physically active outdoors 20 years from now. With climate change comes the rising sea levels and stronger storms. So unfortunately, the parks, sidewalks, and bike lanes located close to the water may flood more often, or worst case scenarios, stay underwater. If you're an outdoor exercise enthusiast and your favorite parks and trails are gone, plus it's too hot to walk the sidewalks due to the urban heat island effect we previously mentioned, I don't think it'll take much additional motivation to want to move somewhere else. In conclusion, I hope this presentation opened your eyes a little to how climate change may affect and influence the physical activity guidelines 20 years from now. Maybe future editions of the guidelines will scrutinize indoor exercise versus outdoor exercise, rather than just making a blanket statement that X number of minutes of exercise is recommended. Or maybe the guidelines in the future will take more of a regional approach. In the least, my hope is that the discussion of exercise in hot and humid environments is mentioned more than just one tiny paragraph in a 118-page document, as is in the current guidelines. Who knows? Only time will tell. But what we do know is certain factors make the achievement of the current physical activity guidelines more obtainable in hot environments, such as exercising in the early morning on very hot and humid days when it's cooler. As we saw in this study, this may be easier said than done 20 years from now in certain areas of the country due to the ill effects of climate change. Yes, some socially and economically disadvantaged communities may not encounter increased barriers to outdoor physical activity, but unfortunately, they still may face additional health inequities due to climate change. And thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'd love to discuss.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks for that information. It is an interesting topic and definitely one that it's good to bring to light, especially now that we are 2 days away from Earth Day, which is Friday, April 22nd. So thanks for sharing that information with us. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how climate change might affect individuals with osteoarthritis and their ability to be physically active.
Absolutely. I didn't explicitly mention osteoarthritis in this talk, but one of the major things that we promote at the OA Action Alliance is walking, outdoor walking, as part of the Walk with Ease program. And I wanted to show through this presentation, this may be easier said than done. If you are not good in very hot weather, which a lot of individuals aren't, they prefer to be in the cool, or they just cannot regulate their body temperatures as easily in hot weather, they're going to tend to stay inside. And yes, you can exercise inside, but not everyone can. If you live in a smaller unit, you can't necessarily do it, or it's more difficult to do, especially with walking. If you have to take the stairs, maybe some people can't take the stairs to go up and down, so they just tend to stay home. I just wanted to show with this presentation that and asking people to go on a walk, especially if you have bad knees or a bad hip, an extra barrier might be in the way, and that barrier being climate change.
Well, that's a good point. And I think for organizations that offer these programs, it's important to think about this as we put together future programming and making sure that we are providing creative suggestions for people to help them get their physical activity indoors or in a safer way if they do have to exercise outdoors. So thank you for shedding light on that. If anyone else has a topic for Nick, feel free to write it in the chat box. And I did have another question for you, Nick. Wondered, just looking at some of those tables, a lot of the cities, as you mentioned, were some of the larger metropolitan areas. Do you have any idea what or how population density might affect the results in your study?
That was one of the questions we had in our community of practice when we were putting this study together. How does density show up? How's it represented in our study? And I have to point out, it's definitely a limitation. We are comparing New York City to to Charlotte. We are comparing Los Angeles to Birmingham, Alabama. And it's the data we have available to us. I would like to believe Walk Score incorporates city density into that, but since it's a proprietary metric, I do not know the specifics on what it is based off of. That's not released to the public, but regardless, there are definitely similarities between urban areas, which I feel that our study showed are transferable between.
So that's interesting about the walkability score. Do you know anything that goes into that? Like some of does it have to do with green spaces and parks or what sidewalks? Do you know what types of components are included in that score?
It has all those included in it. It's how easy it is. It's a measure of walkability, how easy it is to potentially walk to a park, to walk to a grocery store, to walk to a doctor's office. So urban areas tend to have a higher walkability score than suburban areas or rural areas.
That makes sense. If anybody else has a question or has a comment, feel free to type it into the chat. It does look like we have one here. Thanks, Nick. Very interesting work. Are there any predicted variations in physical activity patterns across the world as we anticipate climate change? Example, will the northern winter sport countries become more summer sport countries?
I didn't look outside the United States, but I can't see how it wouldn't affect other places. That's one of the things I mentioned. Whenever our data showed that the West Coast, the upper 2/3 of the West Coast, so basically from San Francisco north to Seattle, and the upper northeast corner of our country seems to be the most receptive. It seemed to have the highest metric of what we did, which basically means it's very walkable today. And the number of predicted increase in days of 90 degrees Fahrenheit or above isn't going to be that many more. It seems like a natural place where people would want to go to if they want to maintain the current status quo. Well, those areas are still going to get warmer. So you have to think, if you're living in Canada, those areas are still going to get warmer. If you live in Scandinavia, those areas are still going to get warmer. So I would like to believe certain areas are going to adapt. I mean, just think of pickleball. Maybe more pickleball will be played. It's a modern sport. People are creative. People fill in the blanks and they find unique ways to maximize what is given to us. And I'm staying positive that society will come up with some new ways to exercise in the outdoors in the future.
Well, thank you, Nick. And thanks to everyone who joined us today. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I am going to go ahead and launch a poll. So if you will answer just a few questions before you leave, and then I'll announce next month's presentation topic. So we're sticking with the theme of physical activity. We hope you can join us on May the 18th, where our presentation will feature Dr. Bill Cole, representing the Physical Activity Alliance. And the title of his presentation will be, How Can We Know Where to Go Without a Plan? The U.S. National Physical Activity Plan. That concludes today's presentation. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.